Right, so I guess let's make this. So what I ended up doing over here is a little bit different than how I did it with the seaweed, but it doesn't necessarily matter. So what we did with the seaweed is we had a density attribute, and then we determined scattering based on that. What I did here is another node, and that might be interesting to show that node, just so you know that it exists. So it's called Karf. Let's have a look at it. Right, let's open up the parameters. And as you can see, Karf will allow us to carve splines. So we don't want to carve the from the top, we want to carve from the bottom. So you can see we can put down a carve like that. So now we have this stuff going on. Now maybe we want to do like a, let's do a resample. And let's say how many points do we want? Something like that maybe. So again, we could also scatter points on this. But let's, for now, just do it like this. Again, there's 1001 ways to do anything. And I'm just showing you now how different tools in Houdini work and how you can use them. And of course, the more tools you will know after this course, the more cool stuff you can do yourself. So let's maybe do some. So let's enable Curfew maybe for this thing. Let's calculate a new Curfew for these curves. So now we get a new Curfew going across these lines. So then we can use that Curfew to make a p-scale, like we did before. So all of the same techniques like before. So Curfew, bind export, p-scale. Let's plug it in and do a ramp parameter. Let's make it a spline ramp. Let's go up. Something like that. And let's copy some stuff to it. Let's copy a line. And they are facing completely upwards, which is probably not what we want. So let's have a look. So did we do, so we didn't use the polyframe yet. So we kind of want to do the polyframe before we do this thing. So that's what I showed over here. That's why we need a polyframe. So again, polyframe can calculate the tangents. So if I put the normal in the tangent, it will write out the tangent, and the tangent again is like so it's the tangent following this curve. So now we get something following these curves. So we could also, instead of polyframe, we could also make this ourselves. We could also like make a tangent ourselves. So for example, let's just do it because, I mean, why not, right? Let's do a attribute swap and just show how you could do that. So let's put it in there. And maybe do it after our carve. Let's just have a look. And let's do it after our resample, because maybe we want a little bit less points. Just so I can just sort of show you. So what we could do is we could, because we did before, right? Subtracting points when we did the normal direction. So we could do that again. We could say that I want to subtract something. So I want to subtract from the position. I want to import a point position. So import point attribute. I want to do it from the first input, so from the same input. And I want to run over the current point. But now it will, if I now plug this in, it will subtract the current position from that. So that will just result in a 0. So no normal at all. What I can do is if I type add and I do add constant, I do subtract constant maybe. Subtract constant and subtract 1 from the current point number. So that will mean is that what it's loading in here will be the current point number minus 1. So if we plug that in a normal and have a look. So the ones on the bottom there look a little bit weird. But all right, let's remove the car for now. Let's normalize these. Now you can say we did basically the same. So the only ones acting a little bit weird are the ones on the top, because they don't have anything to subtract, because those are well, the first point. But you can see right now we made the same thing that we did in our Polyframe. We did it ourselves. But again, let's just keep doing it with the Polyframe, but just showing how you can use these tools. And the thing is, you just need to learn how, and by the way, with L you can lay out nodes. So if you select stuff, and if you type Shift L, you can select layout selected nodes. But just the point I'm trying to make is that you can use these techniques to create, for example, certain tools yourself that might already be in Houdini or might not be in Houdini. So that's the point of the entire course, is being able to take data and then use data, manipulate it in a certain way to get to a certain effect. And of course, in this case, we can just use the Polyframe. But let's say if there wasn't any Polyframe, then we could use this. So if you want to do something and there's no subnode for it, you can just do it like this. So yeah, that's just that's the way we need to start thinking about Houdini. All right, so let's just have a look. This one is pointing in the wrong direction, so let's put it to like that. The length is too big. And we kind of want to randomize the direction a little bit. I think that's also what I did over here. So you see I'm randomizing the normal there. So attribute randomize. Let's put it to normal. You can see now they're completely random. I can also say inside sphere, then they're doing it in a sphere, and I can say maybe add to value. And you can kind of see this stuff is pointing upwards, which is not really what we want. Maybe we want to invert the normal that we had. So maybe common what we want to do is in an attribute wrangle maybe, or we could do it in a VOP. Say that we want to use the normal, so v at n times equals -1 to invert it. Right, so now they're pointing in the different direction. And this p scale, we need to invert the wrap because the scales are now not the way we want them to. So now the ones on top are big and the ones on the bottom are small. Maybe we want to add a multiplier in between here. Something like that. All right. So now we have that thing, but of course it needs to be somewhat of a mesh. You can see I'm doing that thing here. So I'm doing it a different way here. You see with the UV texture. So it might be interesting to just explain. We've been using Curfew up until now, and we could use Curfew here, but we could also do it another way, just to prove a point. Let me untemplate, by the way, this thing, because it annoys me. There's another node, for example, if we type UV texture. So that will create a UV, but you can also say that, so this will create a UV by default. So right now it's not doing anything. I can put it to point. So it's creating point UVs. I can say arc length from spline. and I don't have enough points on my line, so let's increase it. Now you can see I get a UV attribute. So generally you would do this, let's say if you want to start generating UVs on your splines, you could like create a UV on your, like if you're doing a sweep, you could create a UV on your line and then sweep across the thing. I think I'm doing that over here. I'm not sure. Anyway, so just to prove a point is that, let's do it in a wrangle, by the way. Now we have this UV texture here. So 0 to 1, because it will go across the thing. And we could say that f at curfew equals at uv.x. Now we get a curfew attribute, and that would be, so let's, if we, for example, call it curfew2. Let's say if we do a resample and turn off this whole thing and call curfew, you can see we get exactly the same thing. Exactly the same values. So you can create these things any way you want. And I understand that this can be a little bit confusing. It's like, oh, but yeah, why is he doing it this way? I'm just trying to get the point across that it's like the way of working in Houdini is just like taking data and manipulating data. And I know it's about the course is now starting to get a little bit more complicated. And I mean, don't worry if you have to watch these parts multiple times, because the whole VOP stuff and attribute stuff is a little bit confusing. But this is just the most important stuff in Houdini, and once you know this, you can do a lot of cool stuff, and then we can implement that knowledge later to do like simulations and stuff. But again, the entire underwater shot is entirely done just with all the things that we're learning here. No simulation at all. All right, anyway, so let's just remove, now I'm just gonna keep maybe this this thing for now. So just so you understand what's going on there, so just call it curfew. And then we can use curfew to, well, to create a p scale. So instead of saying curfew like this, maybe say that we want to do, we want to set maybe the p scale here. Maybe we want to do that later, by the way. Let's keep it like that. And you need to copy over the curfew. So let's say right, so now we have the curfew. Have it over there. And now let's say we want to create some width on this thing. So let's bind. Curfew. Bind export. P scale. Plug it in. Ramp parameter. Multiply. And again, you can just copy and paste these nodes. So after this, I will be copying and pasting these nodes. But just to show a couple of times how this thing works. So now we get something that generates a p scale. Let's also do it in a wrangle, so you know how that works. Okay, so at p scale equals channel ramp, p scale ramp at curfew. And then we want to multiply this entire thing by a slider, which we could create in there, but we could also say that we do it, create a slider up here. So float multi. And then say times multi. So again, this is going to do exactly the same, but now in a wrangle. Right, so now what we can do is we can just add a polywire. So you can see polywire will create a mesh. Let's add p-scale here. And probably we don't want as many points on our line here because it's just creating heavy geometry. Let's maybe only make it 8. And let's just make it smaller. Let's invert the spline. So maybe something like that. Let's make it a Bézier. And let's up the divisions. The ones on the bottom here seem to get way too big. Okay, so what's happening here is that we are giving the same p-scale to every single one of our things. So probably know when we run. So we have a Curfew already on our incoming stuff. So we could use that to sort of manipulate our thing. So maybe what we're going to do is call this thing here Curfew2. Then let not copy this over. So then we're going to keep our Curfew from our original thing. Now you see we have Curfew and we have Curfew2. All right. So then we can go in here and we can say, so now you can see it's already like now it's scaling down. So we can say copy and paste this thing, Curfew2, and multiply the entire thing maybe by Curfew2. Or let's ramp by Curfew2 and then do it the other way around. So and then multiply by Curfew. And we kind of want to maybe invert that whole thing. All right, so just copy and paste it like that. And so let's have a look at what our original thing looked like. So we probably want a lot more points on this thing. Something like that, maybe. Let's make them a little bit thicker. Right. Right, so I guess maybe change this a little bit. Maybe we want to change this look a little bit, maybe. What we're doing. So, okay. So I'm going to change it a little bit. What I did in the original thing is I polywired it, the whole thing over here. So let's just create a width attribute over here. We don't even need this Curfew 2, and let's just copy it like that. So again, it doesn't really matter that much the way you do anything. It's just everything is just well, you can do it any order you want. It's just like this. So as you can see, it was flickering a little bit before, and now it won't do the whole flickering thing. Now it's a little bit more stable because it only needs to mesh the whole thing once. So let's just scale a little bit. Right, so I think I'm kind of liking the way this looks. So let's have a look at our other thing. All right, so now we made this thing. There's some more stuff down here, which we are not covering right now. But so this is setting the scale for the displacement inside of the shader. So right now we're just going to make the model, and then we'll come back to this model by the time we're going to implement the whole thing and start like working on the shader and the look. And then we're going to add these things back in. So some other things that we need for this model. So just for now, let's keep it for all the stuff that we need for the model itself, and then later we'll return to this model once we start moving this into the scene when we want to start shading it. But one step at a time. So let's maybe move this out of the way a little bit. So now we created two parts of the thing. And you could, if you want, you can have these boxes. You could say that call this ring. You could give it names like that, for example. You could say call this base. I don't think I'm gonna do that for now, but just keep in mind that you can do that. I might add that later. So let's head over to the to the next step.